All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive?
Always.
Awesome. So get this. Today we're talking fingerprints.
Ooh, interesting.
Yeah, I know, right? You probably think it's kind of basic, but stick with us, okay?
Yeah.
Because there's way more to these little ridges than you think. We're going way beyond the crime scene stuff. Have you ever actually thought about, why we even have fingerprints?
Yeah, it's one of those things you never really think about.
Right. So let's get into it. What's the deal with fingerprints? What's their main purpose?
Well, the first thing is those patterns we have on our fingertips. They're not just for smudging things up. Their main job is grip. You see, the ridges are kind of like tiny treads. They increase friction between our skin and whatever we touch.
So like tire treads help cars grip the road.
Exactly. It's all about making the most contact and stopping things from slipping. This extra grip was super important for, our primate ancestors who needed their hands for everything, like climbing trees, using tools,
Right. Yeah, totally. But wait, if it's all about grip, wouldn't rough, sandpapery fingertips be even better? Why the ridges?
Ah, that's where it gets interesting. It's not just about more friction. Those ridges are also crucial for dealing with moisture.
Moisture. So they keep our hands from getting all sweaty.
Well, kinda, but it's a bit more complicated than that. See, the ridges act like a drainage system, getting rid of extra moisture like sweat, but also keeping just enough for a good grip.
Okay, so my fingerprints are like what? Tiny self-adjusting humidifiers.
You could think of it that way. They help create this consistent environment on our skin, so our grip stays good no matter what.
That's crazy. It's like evolution thought of everything. How did scientists even figure all this out?
It took a lot of work. They looked at fingerprints under microscopes, tested how they work on different surfaces, even used cameras to watch how grip works in different situations.
Wow, that's dedication. It's amazing how much effort goes into understanding something we totally take for granted. Okay, so grip and moisture. But I'm guessing there's more, right?
You bet. Fingerprints don't just help us hold stuff, they also boost our sense of touch.
Really? But don't our nerves do the whole feeling thing?
They do, but fingerprints are like little amplifiers for those nerves. The ridges make all these tiny receptive fields, each one super sensitive to any change in texture.
So each ridge is its own little sensor.
Exactly. And these sensors are packed in tight, making our fingertips incredibly sensitive. In fact, those receptive fields, they're only about 0.4 millimeters wide.
That's tiny.
Yeah. That's why you can feel the difference between, say, silk and sandpaper just by touch. Fingerprints give your brain this super detailed map of the surface.
Oh, I never realized how much is going on right there on our fingertips. So if fingerprints are so important for grip and touch, do all primates have them?
Great question. And it shows just how important these adaptations are. Primates aren't the only ones with fingerprints.
Wait, seriously? Who else has them?
Koalas, for example. Yeah, they evolved way over in Australia, totally separately. But guess what? They have fingerprints too. And get this, they're super similar to ours.
Koalas with fingerprints?
Yeah.
That's wild. It's like nature only has so many good ideas.
That's one way to put it.
Okay, so fingerprints. Not just for us humans, and definitely not just for crime shows. These little ridges are a big deal.
They really are. And honestly, we've only just scratched the surface of what makes them so fascinating.
Well, in that case, let's keep digging. What else can you tell us about these amazing little features?
Well, let's talk about dermatoglyphics, the study of skin patterns.
Okay, I'm listening.
Dermatoglyphics. Sounds kind of like something Sherlock Holmes would say, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
But it's a real thing, a whole field of study. And it's showing us some amazing connections between our fingerprints and all sorts of things like our health and even personality.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying my fingerprints can tell me about my health?
It's still early days, but the research is pretty exciting. Some studies are finding that certain fingerprint patterns might mean you're more likely to have certain health problems.
So, if your fingerprint has a certain kind of swirl, it could mean you might have a higher chance of getting a specific illness.
That's the basic idea. It's not like a fortune teller or anything, but some researchers think fingerprints could be like early warning signs, maybe even help doctors personalize treatments in the future.
Wow, that's taking fingerprints to a whole new level. But how is that even possible? How can something like fingerprints be linked to our health?
Well, remember, fingerprints form when we're still in the womb, right? That's a super important time for development. Things like hormone levels, even stuff in our environment, they can all affect how fingerprints form. And those same things can affect how other parts of our body develop too.
So it's like fingerprints are a little record of what was happening in our bodies way back then.
Exactly. Pretty cool, huh?
Yeah, super cool and a little freaky. What kind of health connections have they found so far?
There have been some interesting studies linking some fingerprint patterns with things like heart disease, schizophrenia, even cancer. But, and this is important, this research is still new. We're not at a point where we can diagnose someone based on their fingerprints. It's more about seeing if there are connections and using that to understand our bodies better.
Okay, so we're not ditching doctors for fingerprint readers just yet.
Right. Exactly.
But it's definitely something to keep an eye on. What about the personality stuff? Are you saying my fingerprints can tell if I'm like an introvert or an extrovert?
Well, the personality link is even less certain than the health stuff. Some researchers think certain personality traits might match up with specific fingerprint patterns. Like one theory is that people with more whorls on their fingerprints tend to be more creative and independent.
Interesting.
But again, this is mostly just speculation. We need a lot more research before we can say anything for sure.
So, still in the fun fact zone rather than scientifically proven when it comes to personality and fingerprints.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's exciting to think about these little ridges that we hardly even notice that could be telling us so much about who we are.
I know. I used to just think fingerprints were cool because of like detective shows and stuff. But this is a whole other level of intrigue. So even with all this research, we're still figuring out fingerprints.
Totally. We've learned a lot, but there's still a ton of mystery. Fingerprints are a great example of how complex and amazing nature is, and how there's always more to learn, even in the things we see every day.
I'm definitely looking at my own fingerprints differently now. It's incredible how something so small can be so complicated and tell us so much. Okay, but enough about, what was it called?
Dermatoglyphics.
Right, dermatoglyphics. Let's switch gears for a minute. You said earlier that fingerprints are useful for more than just solving crimes, right?
Oh, definitely. We use fingerprints for so many things now, from security to our phones and computers.
Okay, let's talk about that. I'm ready to dive into the world of fingerprint technology. So we've gone from, like, monkeys in the jungle to fingerprints maybe predicting our health. It's crazy. But now I'm thinking about how we use fingerprints in everyday life, beyond the whole crime-solving thing.
It makes sense when you think about it. We leave fingerprints on everything, right? So using them for security and stuff, it's kind of obvious.
Yeah, like I unlock my phone with my fingerprint.
Yeah.
But are there other examples, maybe ones we don't even realize?
Oh, tons. Airports use them for border control. Some companies use them to track when employees clock in and out, and of course to get into buildings or access secure information. Even some banks are using fingerprints for transactions.
Wow, they really are everywhere. It's like we're obsessed with fingerprints now. Is that like a good thing? All this reliance on fingerprint tech?
That's a really good question, and it brings up a whole other issue, privacy.
Right.
On the one hand, fingerprints are pretty secure, hard to fake, everyone's are unique. But then you have to think about all that data. Where are our fingerprints being stored? What if someone gets access to that?
True. So it's like convenience and safety versus maybe risking our privacy.
Exactly. It's something to consider. Any new technology, there's always going to be ethical questions that come with it.
Definitely. So we've talked about the past, present, even the future of fingerprints. It's clear that these little things are way more than just lines on our skin.
I agree.
They're part of who we are, how we experience the world, and maybe even how we'll shape the world going forward.
Well said. Fingerprints really show the power of evolution and how amazing the human body is.
I think it's safe